we've experienced is that people tend to move to the shelters when the event, when the activity, when things begin to happen, and that creates a tremendous chaos in the shelter. So we're encouraging persons, as soon as we open the shelters, within a very short space of time, once you have made that determination that you are not safe where you are, you require sheltering, please go to the shelters. We will be making the list of shelters available to all the media houses and the radio stations, and we'd like to encourage them as we go along to, of course, highlight those shelters, to indicate to the people where the shelters are, and people need in communities to know where the shelters are. You need to, that's the first thing, you need to know where your shelters are. It's important that you know where your shelters are. And we also want to encourage the general public that when you come to the shelters, some people come to the shelters, as we say in local parlance, with their hands swinging. We're encouraging people, when you come, at least come with some water, some with some dry foods, come with some canned foods that will last you for at least 24 to...
The Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force will continue to work in partnership with the various agencies to ensure that safety is maintained at various locations and installations in the Commonwealth of Dominica. I want to thank all my officers for their unwavering support and commitment to duty. Together, we will ensure that Dominica remains safe. I wish to also thank the business community for partnering with us in this venture. I also want to thank the general public for their continued support and look forward to their cooperation. The emergency numbers for the Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force are as follows. Police Headquarters 266-5100, 448-2222, the emergency number 911, and our command center number is 245-4033. May God bless Dominica, and may God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Valentine. The important thing there is that people must stay indoors as much as possible, especially when you have a storm raging out there. Given again, as I alluded to earlier, on the fragility of the country, post-Hurricane Maria, people may just have patched up some roofs so that they could at least stay in their house so they won't get wet and things of that nature. And you have 75 miles an hour wind blowing out there that can rip off this galvanized and have them flying all over the place. You're putting yourselves in harm's way. So we're encouraging people to stay indoors as much as possible when the state says it's time to lock down. And you should only move again when the all clear is given. When the emergency services, the disaster office, feels that it is safe to go outside again, the storm is out of the way, then we will issue the all clear. And whenever there's a curfew on, again, it means that only people who have business, bona fide business, not just to go visit friends, visit relatives, go look for bread and sugar and those things. When there is a curfew, it means that only essential services, people from essential services, people who are dealing with the situation on hand, they are the only person, and persons with passes, they are the only persons to be out. So if you get yourselves picked up, you only have yourself to blame. We are saying again, you are not supposed to be out during the storm, and you are not supposed to be out during curfew hours. At this point, I'll call on the National Disaster Coordinator to just give us some tidbits on the actions that should be taken by residents from now into the arrival of Tropical Storm Isaac.
Good day and welcome to this briefing. As have been echoed by speakers over the past few days, the onus is on all of us with regards to preparation for adverse events. First, some protective actions as follows. Ensure that preparedness activities are completed by tomorrow, Wednesday. If people are staying home, ensure that you store lots of water for drinking, cooking, and cleaning. Have enough food for at least 3 days and backup lighting. Secure first aid kits. Secure fuel for generators and cars. Cut overhanging branches that can damage homes. Have plywood on hand for covering windows and glass doors. Move from unsafe areas like landslides and flood-prone areas to a safer area with family and friends and emergency shelters, and make that determination early. Residents along low-lying coastal villages should be on the lookout for possible flooding from seawater intrusion and be prepared to evacuate early. When moving from homes to shelters, bring food, water, and sleeping aids, your basic supplies. Also lighting, such as solar lamps, flashlights, etc. All important documents should be properly secured, such as birth and marriage certificates, passport, health records, house titles, wills, financial information, and have extra cash on hand. People on medication, take all your medications with you and also restock. Move early if you have to move, especially people in compromised structures, including structures with partial covering, tarpaulins, and building with structural damage. Charge your cell phones and your lights. If you have pets and family and farm animals, tag them and let them loose. After the storm, they will return. Listen to your local media and weather information from the local competent authorities. Thank you.
All right, lighting is going to be very critical. Remember, Domlec will turn off the electricity once there is a tropical storm around. So have solar lamps, kerosene lamps, whatever, flashlights, and the batteries. I hope we all have battery operated radios so that we can listen to the weather advisories and announcements that will be put out by the state. In terms of water, at some stage, the water company will shut down the water supply system. So it's your responsibility to collect as much water as possible for drinking, for cooking, and for cleaning. All right? In terms of cash, have cash on hand, but not a whole set of $100 bills. Make sure you have small denominations, because you may not be able to go in a little store or a little shop in a rural area and get change for $100. So have small denominations on hand. We would like to call on the private sector to begin battening down. I mean, we see that on television all the time. When something is approaching Florida, you have private sector and homeowners going to Home Depot and cleaning out Home Depot of all plywood, 2x4s and all kinds of things, and starting to batten down and cover up their windows, cover up their doors, cover up their showcases, etc. We have to learn from the experience of Maria and also other experiences out there, so that we can keep ourselves safe. The important thing here is the safety of yourself. You have to be in a safe place at all times. Prime Minister indicated that we should remain calm, and from the Office of Disaster Management standpoint, we've been on a limited or partial activation for the last few days, given that this tropical storm has been around. And now that we have the confirmation of us being on a hurricane watch, we will look to put our activation into full gear. So we'll be on full activation from today. And if at this point you have any questions for any of the speakers, you can raise it now. We are waiting on the Prime Minister to come back to take questions from you. So anybody with any questions right now, either for Mr. Valentine or Mr. Pascal. If you have any issues dealing with shelters, you can ask me. And then anything on the weather report, Mr. Alexander is here. So members of the media, any questions? Yes.
On the shelters, I heard the speaker say that you must get to the shelters early for space. What if you have 2 families or 3 people in need of shelter and get there late and there's no space?
Well, the way we deal with that, space is never an issue before the fact. We will try to fit everybody in a shelter before the fact. Where we will start thinning out people is after the storm, and that is to prevent any health issues, any disaster within a disaster situation. But as far as the sheltering before the fact, we would prefer it to be at a certain standard. If it's 20 people, the shelter is supposed to hold, to have 20 people, but we will not leave 5 people outside because we are saying that this shelter must hold 20 people. We must find, even if we all have to stand up for the night, we all have to be in a safe place. And then after that, we will look at thinning out.
On the topic of shelters, so taking the neighboring approach, how certain are we that moving to your neighbor's home is safe compared to moving to a shelter? Is there a criteria which was taken when selecting the homes? Is there anything that you can brief us on the safety of the homes?
Yes, certainly the safety is always paramount when you have situations like that, and the safety aspect would have been taken into consideration. The neighborhood approach is mainly for communities where we do not have shelters at this time because of Maria. But it doesn't preclude me, for example, if I have a safe home in a community, even if it has 100 shelters, for somebody to come to my home, because I am willing to accept the person. And people should not accept people in a home that is not safe. But the whole issue of safety has been looked at, taken into consideration and looked at.
I remember during Irma in the British Virgin Islands, those designated shelters, they themselves were destroyed by the storm. What if a case like that happens? What happens?
We are always hoping that these things do not happen. I never slept at night. When I was the National Disaster Coordinator, I never slept at nights, worrying that maybe I put 50 or 25 people in a shelter and that shelter collapsed and harm comes to these people. We always tried our best to ensure that the shelters we put people in were safe, were the best, and we have not had a situation like that in Dominica. I understand that in the British Virgin Islands and elsewhere, we've had situations where shelters were damaged. Now, I recall Hurricane David of 1979 in my community. The shelter that was open for the public, the roof went, and of course people had to leave the shelter at some point when it was a little safe, dodge between wind gusts and what have you, and go to the Catholic church in the community. And while they were there, the roof also went, and they had to find a final resting place, which was an estate house at the back of the church. Nobody died. That was an unfortunate situation. Nobody died, nobody was injured. But we hope in situations like that do not occur here in Dominica and even elsewhere. Because when you put somebody in a shelter, you're really saying to that person, we're putting you in a safe place. And for example, I wouldn't want to leave my home, which maybe I think is a very safe place, thinking I'm going to a safer place and find myself compromised because the shelter. So engineers look at those shelters, builders look at those shelters. We always try to be on top of our game as far as those shelters are concerned. They would need him on camera though, Marshall. Come up.
Very often we are told that, or we are given the coordinates of the storm. And we know from your standpoint, it's easy to say to us that the location of the storm is 14.5 degrees north or 9.6 or 46.9 degrees west. From a local standpoint, a layman standpoint, give us some directive as to the exact location. When you speak of 14.5 north,
14.6
or 14.6, whatever it is, give us the exact location, because I think what Dominicans would probably most be excited about is, look, I hear in this 14.5 or 14.6, where exactly is that storm? Can you be a little bit more clinical in your explanation for us?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, 775 miles east of Dominica. And you know, towards the east, is when you look towards Carinago territory. Right. So if you go 775 miles in that direction, you will find the center of the storm. But in reference to the latitude and longitude, Dominica is located at about 15.4 degrees north latitude and 61.4 degrees west longitude. And the storm is 14.6, so that means that the storm is below our latitude. And
so it's somewhere about St.
right.
Barbados area?
No, it's out in the Atlantic Ocean.
Okay, all right.
So it's east of us, out in the Atlantic Ocean, about 775 miles away. That's where the center of that system would be. Okay? So if you up on a plane and you travel 775 miles to the east of Dominica, then you would find that storm. Does that answer your question, sir?
Not really for the listeners.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Alexander. And the coordinates are always the center of the storm. Mr. Valentine, and he has to go, so any questions, he'll take all your questions now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Superintendent Valentine,
Yes.
the police have called on the business places in Dominica to take responsibility for the security of their businesses during the time of these disasters. Can you explain exactly what the police would like to see from these business places?
Business owners have a responsibility in law to protect themselves and their property. What we're asking the public to do is to activate their disaster plan, and once that is done, it is going to assist the police in ensuring that the community, their business place, their property is safe during the passage of the weather system. It's as simple as that.
All right, let me ask the Prime Minister a question there, please.
So, any more questions for me? Because I have to leave. I have to ensure that things are safe for you all, your families, your business place, and so on. Yes.
I'm asking about the curfew, but I think that is probably the Prime Minister and his promotion.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Prime Minister. Sorry. Yeah, Prime Minister. You go to us? I can go ahead. Yeah, Prime Minister. You coming off this meeting of NEPO this morning? I would like to find out. Would you say that based on what you've heard this morning, would you say Dominica is better prepared to deal with a storm 1 year later? Of course, we saw what happened last year during Maria. Would you say, based on the information you have, that Dominica is better prepared now, 1 year later, to deal with a storm?
I think, one could respond to the question from different perspectives. Clearly, our country, in terms of its physical state, is more vulnerable now than it was before Maria, because we came from Erica 2015 and Maria 2017. But in terms of awareness, not only by NEPO itself, but by the general public, I believe that there's a greater sense of awareness, and there's a greater sense of determination to take action at different levels, learning from the experiences of Maria in terms of our planning. And even with regards to NEPO, while it is always work in progress, because there's nothing that will be foolproof or perfect, but I believe that there is a greater awareness on the part of the planners and the organizers that we have to keep on going the extra mile and learning from past experiences and putting systems in place based on learned experiences to ensure that we can better protect and prepare our citizens for any upcoming hurricane. And you saw it with regards to our burial, what we did for burial. Now, there are some quarters who said that we went beyond what we should have. But you never know. We always have to remind ourselves that Maria went from a tropical, from category 3 to category 5 in 36 minutes. And therefore, unless this stuff passes you, you cannot let your guard down. And even it passes you, you still have to ensure that you get it all clear. Because one must not forget in 1999 with Lenny. Lenny went ahead and Lenny came back and affected the west coast of Dominica in a dramatic way. So there are contemporary events that we have to be mindful of and learn from them in our preparation. And this is why also we're not waiting for when a storm is approaching for us to be planning and reviewing our plans and to checking this and to checking that. It is a continuous process. That's why we had a meeting last week Wednesday. We never knew that we will be visited by these storms this week, but we know that we're in the hurricane season, and therefore we need to prepare and continuously revising our plans and so, because things change. This is why we're not only staying in Roseau and to determine whether a shelter is okay. We go to those communities, to visit these communities, to engage the community people, and to determine the safety or the lack thereof of certain shelters and so forth. And I believe that there's more circumspection on the part of the various committees and the various government departments in terms of our planning and ensuring those things. And I can tell you the extent of the questioning and the quizzing of reporters at the NIPO meeting is very detailed. And it is detailed because we want to ensure that we pay attention to every single detail in the preparation. But at the end of the day, NIPO can do all of what NIPO wants to do, all of what NIPO has to do. It comes to us as citizens to ensure that we take action to protect ourselves as human beings, to protect our properties, and to protect our businesses. We are preparing for a storm is an individual responsibility. It's an individual responsibility. The state has a responsibility to its citizens, but we also have a responsibility to ourselves. So a short answer to your question is that I am satisfied that we are better prepared now, taking into consideration the experiences of Hurricane Maria. But at the end of the day, how well prepared we are is how seriously we as individuals take the warnings and take the admonitions and take the suggestions and take the guidance of what we need to do as individual citizens to better prepare ourselves. Now, if NIPO is put in place, everything is put in place, and we will maybe do one maybe at 5:30 so that we capture the next advisory coming from the Met office. So at 5:30 back here, we'll have a live press briefing that will capture the 5 o'clock weather advisory, so that we can give you an update formally, officially from the authorities of the state that are charged with that responsibility.
Yeah, in light of the preparations going forward, is it the thinking that government should probably, or there should be some advisory with regards to cutoff points? That we want to have, if you're preparing, for instance, and you're buying stuff, you should do that by a certain period. You should try to batten down by a certain period. You should try to move into your shelters by a certain time. Yeah. You know, are those guidelines provided?
Well, in respect to the shelter, the shelter committee NIPO will advise you on when the shelters will open. So in respect to that there will be a cutoff point for that, or an opening time, whatever word you want to use for that. In respect to preparation, the preparation has to be continuous, and it has to be done now. Let us not wait for when the storm is upon us for us to go. So our advice, you have the time now, my brother and sister, go and get your stuff now. Secure it, secure a place, so that, you know, the little bits and pieces you have to do, you can do it at some point. But our advice is to you is to prepare now, to get your stuff now. Get your stuff now, get your flashlight, make sure your batteries are working, they're new batteries, they're functioning. Make sure you have water, all the storage tanks that you have, it's secured, your animals are safe, you know. Do not wait for last minute to go to the mountains to bring your two goods down. go and get the goats down now and secure them under your house in a safe place so that you have your goats don't get killed and deprive yourself of an income after the hurricane, if we were to be visited by the hurricane. Yeah. In respect to curfew, I know the question was asked about a curfew. That again will be taken at a later date, later time. So we're not in a position to tell you whether there'll be a declaration of a state of emergency and the associated curfew with that. But at a later time, we will advise you. Of course, this